if you realize that if you impoverish people, which you certainly will do if you make energy expensive, if you impoverish people, you make them desperate. And desperate people are not investing in a green future. That's for sure. They're going to rampage through whatever resources are available to them in very short order. And so I got convinced of this, well, probably 15, 20 years ago, when I started to understand the statistical data indicating that if you got people's GDP up, average GDP up above $5,000 a year in US dollars, that they started taking a long-term view of the future ecologically. It's like, well, of course that's the case. And then I thought, that's so cool. That means that you could work really hard to make energy inexpensive and people rich. And one of the consequences of that would be that people would be much more attendant to genuine ecological concerns locally and over time.
Well, yes, I think, when I talk about advancing human flourishing on Earth, I don't draw a distinction really between our economy and our environment. I mean, I think it's actually all our environment. And I think of environment in a very humanistic way. So if you take a bird, right? Like, is a bird's nest a part of its environment?
Right.
I would say yes, right? So I think a factory is our environment and the beach is our environment.
Yeah.
I think we're just uniquely good at reshaping our environment to be particularly conducive to us. So when you talk about ecological thinking, I really think of that as humanistic thinking about our environment, as in how do we make sure that we have...
Yes, I was still using that dichotomous perspective.
So you're looking at it from an advancing human flourishing on Earth perspective, but it's what you're pointing out is the more resources you have, the more time you have, the more you can have you can think about that in a broad way, right? When you're just freezing to death,
yes, exactly.
You just cut down whatever trees are around you and you burn them, and what else are you going to do? Versus you don't think as holistically about your environment, not because you wouldn't care about those things, it's just you have a sense of urgency.
Yes.
Whereas once you're wealthy, you can think about things like, hey, what would the ideal climate be? I mean, let's leave aside, are we negatively impacting? Like, how can we maybe make more places like California, right? Or how can we optimize the species on this particular island for some particular goal? Or even we really like, at home, we have a dog and it's like, how can we make this dog really survive? Or how can we get rid of these mosquitoes? Like, we don't like these malarial mosquitoes. The polar bears, they're beautiful, but we want them cordoned off so they don't eat us. Like, we're really engineering the earth. So when you talk about ecological stuff, I think about it as this very sort of long-term and broad thinking engineering of the earth to advance human flourishing. Whereas the anti-impact crowd, that's not how they think of it. So if you made that argument to them, they're like, no, we don't want to impact it at all. We don't want like 8 billion prosperous people who have nice gardens and clean air. Like, that's way too humanized in Earth. We need, back to the Pleistocene, as the, Earth First, I think, used to say. So that's just to say, like, I don't like this idea of like, if from an environmental perspective, because is it a pro-human environmental perspective or anti-human? And if it's anti-human, they won't accept anything that involves human
Correction,
success.
gratefully accepted.
So thank you.